Now let's talking about raising moral kids. And I believe strongly in this. I'm clearly Asian Indian, and if you're familiar with Asian Indian households and of course other ethnicities, man, my parents were so incredibly strict. They rode me into the ground about absolutely everything. And I hated it when I was growing up, but to be honest now, I'm so very thankful for it because it kept me on the straight and narrow and it helped me to develop a moral compass. And that just simply means that I'm going to do the right thing, whether there's all sorts of people around me watching me, or if I'm in the privacy of my bedroom on a Sunday night with just my iPad and an internet connection. I'm going to do the right thing. And so, how can we raise moral kids? Some of my colleagues over at UPenn have done really good work in this, as well as other researchers, and so it's worth spending just a few minutes summarizing this. First off, there's been a ton of research done cross-culturally, across the entire planet. And so one of the studies involved 50 different countries. And so they surveyed and interviewed a number of parents in each of those countries. And they said, parents, you tell me, what are the dominant traits that you're trying to instill in your children? What are dominant characteristics that you want them to grow up with? And across all of those 50 countries, way up there on the list was, we want them to be successful. We want them to be high achievers. So that makes sense, that's intuitive. But what's even more interesting is that across all of those 50 countries, above success and achievement was, we want them to be kind. We want them to be compassionate and others focused and generous and willing to give themselves in various situations. So I loved this to see that. And again, it might be intuitive to you and I, but the research bore it out. So then there has been a number of studies related to twins, identical twins, fraternal twins, trying to get to the bottom of, okay, is it nature or is it nurture? And what they identified was that the propensity or the tendency to be kind and generous and compassionate is due about 25 to 50% to nature. It's actually genetic. But what's interesting about that is that it means that 50 to 75% are due to nurture, which means it's on my shoulders as an educator, it's on anybody who has a platform, anybody who has a voice in the lives of kids to demonstrate, okay, this is what you should do, being a model, being someone that they can emulate. So we're raising our kids, you and I, and they're making good decisions and they're making not so good decisions. So we want to commend and express approval about good decisions, but we want to sort of express disapproval for their bad decisions. But according to the research, there's a specific way that you and I should do this. So when it comes to good behavior, we want to make sure that we complement their actions as a reflection of their character. So for example, I think about myself and I think about how over many, many years, I've gotten a reputation of being a great listener. I don't know where it came from, but that's just who I am. Everyone knows that Samir is a great listener. And so if anybody now needs some of my time to unburden their heart or to share with me what's going on in their lives, even if I have a really stressed out day, even if I'm incredibly busy, I will remember that in the past I have been labeled a great listener, and I will rise up to that identity, and I'll come through. Similarly, let's say that my daughter's in the kitchen and we're making stew together, and she's being a great helper because I'm working on the chicken broth and she's cutting up vegetables for me. And I could say to her, well, wow, Jennifer, that's very helpful, that you're doing that. Thank you for helping me whenever there's some sort of need here in the kitchen or otherwise. But what I should do instead is say, wow, Jennifer, you're such a great helper. What you are doing is what we need to see more in this world. The world definitely needs more helpers than you. So whether you commend someone, a child, as a great listener, a great encourager, a great helper, what you're doing is tying it to their identity. When I was an adolescent, I was looking around me, trying to figure out what sort of roles I could embrace and take on that would lead to validation and affirmation from others. And so I mentioned I'm a great listener. I bet in part I'm a great listener because I was commended for that. I was approved and affirmed and validated for that, and that became my identity. I don't think that's a bad thing. As adolescents are looking for identity, use that to your advantage. Secondly, when it comes to commending our kids' good behavior, we want to make sure that it is rooted in praise and not reward. And I've personally been guilty of messing up in that way. For example, I work with this youth group in the community, and so little kids, elementary school age. And to be honest, I have said, look, guys, if you will just be quiet for 20 minutes and listen to the speaker, I promise to give you candy afterwards. But then I heard about this research and read it, and I was like, man, I can't be doing that. Instead, I want it to be based on praise. I want them to also to do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do, not because I'm giving them Jolly Ranchers or Blow Pops afterwards. So please keep that in mind in terms of a specific way to express approval when it comes to your kids' behaviors.